What do you think when you hear about the FIFA World Cup? Do you imagine a dopamine-fueled moment in sports history when a nation unites under one flag to celebrate its team's victory? Or perhaps you think of the multi-million-dollar businesses and industries that surround the events. Whatever your initial thoughts may be, they probably don't involve Qatar, a small, oil and gas-rich nation in the Middle East. Yet when FIFA announced that Qatar would host the 2022 World Cup, it came as a questionable choice, to say the least. On the face of it, Qatar ticks a lot of the right boxes. It's a fast-growing economy with a lot of money to throw around, and it has a proven track record of hosting major international events. But there are also a lot of dark secrets surrounding Qatar's World Cup bid, secrets that have led many to believe that the whole process was rigged from the start. In this explosive expose, we'll take a look at the murky world of FIFA and reveal some of the dark secrets that not many people know about. This is the story of the False World Cup. When FIFA awarded Russia the right to host the 2018 World Cup and Qatar the right to host the 2022 World Cup in 2010, it came as a surprise to most people. After all, Qatar had never before shown any interest in football, and it had never qualified for a World Cup. And with competitors like Australia, the United States, and Japan in the running, it seemed like Qatar was an unlikely choice. So how did Qatar end up winning the bid? There are a few theories floating around, but according to FIFA at the time, hosting the first ever World Cup in the Middle East and how it would raise the profile of the sport in the region was a major factor in the decision. But there are other factors that many people believe played a role in Qatar's surprise win. For starters, it was only revealed to fans and players after the vote that Qatar was unbearably hot during the summer months, at a time when the World Cup is usually played. This would make it impossible for players to compete in the conditions and would be a logistical nightmare for fans trying to travel to the country. This led to FIFA changing the dates of the World Cup to the winter months, which created a whole host of other problems. But again, what was the real reason behind choosing Qatar? There are many who believe that the answer lies in the phenomenon known as sportswashing. Sportswashing is the process whereby a country or a company uses its hosting for a major sporting event to clean up its image. In other words, by hosting the World Cup, Qatar was able to present itself to the world as a modern and progressive country, despite the fact that it has a long history of human rights abuses. This isn't a new phenomenon. Countries like Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia have all used major sporting events to sportswash their image in the past. When these events are televised to billions of people worldwide, it provides a perfect opportunity for countries to present themselves in a positive light. For Qatar, this was especially important because at the time of its World Cup bid, it was facing a lot of criticism for the treatment of migrant workers. In Qatar, migrant workers make up around 95% of the labor force. Most of them come from countries like Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and they work in construction, domestic work, and other manual labor jobs. These workers often face extreme conditions, such as working long hours in the scorching heat with no rest or water breaks. They are also paid very little a month, sometimes as little as $200 a month. Because of these conditions, migrant workers often suffer from heat exhaustion and other health problems. In some cases, they even die on the job. Since 2010, it's estimated that over 6,500 migrant workers have died in Qatar, and that's an average of one death every single day. Now you might be thinking, why is FIFA making itself complicit in this? Well, that's a good question, and the answer, which is not so surprising, is money. Long before the bidding process in the 2022 World Cup even began, there were plans to make Qatar the host country. In fact, multiple FBI investigations have revealed that the process was rife with corruption from the very beginning. For starters, it's been proved that several FIFA officials were bribed in order to vote for Qatar. The overwhelming evidence confirmed that multiple FIFA officials were wined, dined, and given lavish gifts in the exchange for their votes. In one instance, a witness testified in front of the US court that Julio Grondona, a high-ranking FIFA official, was given a $1 million bribe to vote for Qatar. Grondona isn't the only one who was bribed either. Half of the 22 members of FIFA's executive committee were either fined, banned, or indicted for being involved in bribery scandals. In other words, the entire process from the very beginning to the end was corrupt. So let's backtrack to the human rights abuses. What was really happening behind the scenes? Qatar didn't have the infrastructure to host a World Cup, so in order to get things done in time, Qatar hired around 1.6 million migrant workers from the countries of Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. These workers hoped to earn a decent wage so that they could support their families back home, but what they got was anything but. They were promised good salaries and working conditions, but in reality, they were paid very little and made to work in extremely dangerous conditions. In fact, workers' passports were often taken away from them, and they were effectively trapped in Qatar. The system behind this is known as the kafala system, and it's been likened to modern-day slavery. The kafala system isn't unique to Qatar. It's actually used in several other countries in the Middle East. Here's how it works. The employer becomes a sponsor of a migrant worker. This gives the employer complete control over the worker. The employer can decide when the worker can leave the country and can cancel their visa at any time. This makes it very easy for employers to exploit workers, as they know they can't just up and leave. As a result of the kafala system, migrant workers in Qatar are extremely vulnerable to abuse, and they've often made to work long hours in dangerous conditions for very little pay. And if they complain, they risk being deported and going back to extreme poverty. In the lead up to the World Cup, Amnesty International documented the widespread human rights abuses taking place in Qatar. It found that migrant workers were promised high wages, good working condition, and respectable accommodation, but in reality, they were often paid very little, made to work in dangerous conditions, and given substandard accommodation, usually 8 to 4 bedroom apartments, splitting the shifts 12 hours each. A 2018 report found that a group of 1,200 migrant workers had not received their salaries for several months and did not have access to running water or electricity. The report also found that these workers had to rely on food handouts from charity organizations just to get by. In other words, the conditions these workers were living in were nothing short of horrific. In 2016, Amnesty International released a report on the condition of migrant workers in Qatar. The report found that migrant workers were being paid very little, made to work in dangerous conditions, and given substandard accommodation. The report was based off of interviews with hundreds of migrant workers. One worker interviewed by Amnesty said, "I went to the company office telling the manager I wanted to go home, back to my country, because my pay is late. The manager screamed at me and says, 'Keep working or you will never leave.' Another worker said, 'My manager just said, I don't care what they told you in Bangladesh. We are giving you the salary and nothing more. If you keep talking like this, we'll cancel your visa and send you back.' This push forced Qatar to change their laws. In 2020, Qatar introduced 2 new laws to protect the rights of migrant workers. The first law suspended the requirement of exit permits for migrant workers. This means that workers are now free to change jobs or even leave the country without permission from their employers. The second law established a minimum wage of 1,000 Qatari riyals, which is around $275 per month. While these reforms are a step in the right direction, they must be properly implemented or enforced in order to make a real difference. What's appalling is that FIFA had used this issue as an opportunity to score some PR points, and the organization claims that this reform was only possible due to the World Cup. However, FIFA also conveniently ignores the fact that for 9 years, it did absolutely nothing to help the workers that were being exploited. So, should the World Cup be boycotted? The World Cup is almost upon us, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding Qatar's hosting of the event. Whether it's human rights abuses, the corruption, or the fact that Qatar was awarded the World Cup in the first place, there's plenty of reasons to believe that this event should not go ahead as planned. So do you think that the World Cup should be boycotted? Do you think FIFA is an honest organization and stands by its slogan, "For the game, for the world"? Share your thoughts and comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Crew Docs, where we'll be covering stories of money, power, tech, and business.